Thank you.
Well, now we can just skip right over the intro slide. So look, you all get 5 minutes of your life back. And hopefully you all know who this is. If not, it's Gabe. Gabe is here.
Forever here. So my name is Jason Montgomery. I'm a principal researcher at Veracode. I work on the static platform there, doing code analysis. I've done a lot of application security. I've been a software developer for a while, and also used to teach for SANS and write classes for them on .NET's secure coding. So.
And I'm Ryan Sevey. I work for HP Enterprise Security Services. Jason and I also own a video game company together. It's been in existence for about a year now. I used to also be a former professional gamer, so this is kind of drawing from some of the experience I've personally had.
Yeah, and since we've been around about a year, that means we don't have anything ready for anyone to look at.
So first, a little bit about this talk. We've been researching the gaming industry as a whole for about a year. We have a whole big wiki on it. It's huge. And we're like, all right, this is kind of cool. Let's go take it to Black Hat, or let's go to PAX Dev. And basically what we got from developers in the gaming industry was like, we don't care. You know, we don't have time for that. We have tight deadlines. We need to make our game and get it out the door. We did actually start to talk to Valve, and then that was kind of promising, but talked to one guy, then we never heard from him again. And that's kind of the thing that we've been dealing with so far. So a little bit about the industry. It is pretty massive. This data comes from the Open Gaming Alliance. So the part here, I mean, $20 billion just in PC gaming sales alone. Kind of a big deal. As far as who the population of gamers in comparison, your PC has the largest amount. Consoles actually has a relatively small amount of people who use them. And then, of course, your smartphones, your smart devices, which I would expect to see these graphs kind of change, and smartphone will easily take over PC in a couple of years.
Yeah.
So a little bit about who is the typical gamer. It is not the person over there on the right. It's not the South Park guy who's sitting there in his mom's basement eating pizza. No. So 67% of U.S. households play games. 62 of those play online, and there's actually a huge female presence too. It's not all males. When Edward Snowden released some documents, the intelligence services had a whole profile written up about who plays online games. And the conclusion of that was, it's not the lone wolf, it's not the guy in the picture. As games have kind of evolved over time, they're more social, people go online and, you know, you want to hang out with your friends. And it's like I said, it's not the lone wolf. So, here's kind of how we break down our research. We have cheating, which is what this is mostly going to focus on today. We're going to talk about the anti-cheat systems, what they're doing, how they're kind of invasive. But there's other parts of this that we would like to eventually get into, and that's what this screen is kind of depicting.
Yeah, just lots of different areas for research. It took us a while to figure out what we wanted to do. Ryan and I talked a bit, and we were trying to come up with, since I work more in defense and application security, I'm more interested in figuring out how to find ways to stop things as opposed to breaking, because it's much easier to break in, as most of us know. Developers have to think about every scenario, and an attacker only has to find one to get in. So we'd like to focus on defense, because that's really where you get the most bang for your buck if you can do it with the development teams, you know, get them educated on application security, that sort of thing. So we were interested in that, and Ryan kept bringing up ideas for how to, you know.
I was like, okay, here's how we're going to defeat cheating. And then Jason's like, oh, yeah, that'll work. And then he'd come back the next day and be like, no, here's how I'm going to defeat that.
That's not going to work.
That went on for about a month.
Yeah, yeah. And so we decided that finally, after looking into some machine learning, to take a look at maybe that as a technique. And we'll get more into that later. But next slide.
So let's equate cheating to Walter White in Breaking Bad. All right, so basically how this all works is you have your cheat maker, the guy who goes out and he codes the cheat. So equate him to basically Walter White or Gustavo. That's them. Then they need to figure out, all right, so I made this. How do I get it out there and how do I make money? So then there are all these cheat sites or the cheat distributors. So basically the way that works is if you want to cheat in an online game, you find these sites, you go there, you sign up, it's subscription based. So every month, the average is about $12. $12 a month, then it goes down to the user, so basically the users of cheats, equate those to meth heads. So here are some of the sites that we looked at. We basically went out and we looked at how many registered users there were for that site. And then out of that, you could depict who was a paid user. So obviously not everyone who registers is going to pay money.
Yeah, and it was interesting because they did publish at least who the active current users were and who was paying and who wasn't in the forums based on like color codes on their IDs. So this is kind of information that I was surprised to see in some forums. There was a very high percentage of paid active users compared to unpaying active users. So it was a little larger than I had expected, at least on some of the more popular sites.
Right, and so we didn't want to just throw out all the huge sites out there. So at the bottom, there were a couple sites that have, a mere 8,700 subscribers, but, in comparison to the 375,000, I mean, what we're kind of getting at here is the people who are making these cheats, they're not poor. I mean, if you go off, if you go off just that data, and we did not look at every single cheat site. No. There's a lot of them out there, such as that are, in Russia, or China, or
we don't know how to Google for those.
Yes.
Taiwan, or any other.
We just didn't have time to learn Russian, so.
Sorry.
This is kind of every month. Those sites that we just showed, $2.8 million a month. Their total budget, $33 million for the year. It kind of puts the people who are in charge of making anti-cheats at a little bit of a disadvantage. I mean,
yeah, their market is to make games, not anti-cheat technology. So it doesn't make sense for them to spend a ton of money there. As long as it looks like they're doing something, I think most people seem to be happy with that. And a lot of the some of the videos we saw, and we'll show one later. With someone actively cheating, they would just say like, "Oh, they'll get banned. It's cool," and that never happened.
So again, we kind of pick on Valve a little bit because that's what a lot of our research was based off of. It's a game called Counter-Strike Global Offensive. If you go and look at their anti-cheat system, which is called VAC, or Valve Anti-Cheat, there's about 2.2 million accounts that are currently banned. So what we're saying is if each of those accounts only cheated for 1 month, that's it. They paid for the cheat 1 month, that's it. They would have essentially fed the cheating developers $21 million. Now, on the flip side, though, a lot of the people who cheat, once you get banned, you'll just go out and buy the game again, make a new account.
Wait for the Steam summer sale.
Exactly. So Valve's making money off of this, too. I mean, there's no doubt about that at all. Valve also profits because, like I said, they're just going to go buy the game again, and that's kind of the vicious cycle.
Yeah, and you're probably not going to risk your full Steam account with 300 games in it to get banned on all of them for cheating in one game. So you're probably going to set up a side account anyway just to run that cheat in. And if that account gets banned, it's easy to create a new one.
So basically we found there's 3 different types of anti-cheat systems. You have your signature-based anti-cheats, which equate those to basically how your antivirus works, or doesn't work. They do a lot of invasive stuff, though, too. I mean, they'll monitor your RAM. Some of them will go out and actually read the browser tabs. There was a talk at DerbyCon several years ago about Blizzard's anti-cheat, the Warden. The invasive nature of it is a little bit concerning. And the bottom line is they really don't work all that well. Next, you have your server-based, and this is more of where they're looking at statistics of the player. So they're really good at detecting some sorts of hacks, like an aimbot. Your accuracy is going to be through the roof, right? Yeah. So if the average player's accuracy is at 20% and you're at 50% and you've been playing the game for 10 hours, that's, unless you're Jesus, and it's probably not going to happen. Jesus. But again, the problem with that is just don't be blatant, right? Just don't go out there and have crazy numbers, and it's not going to work that well. Yeah. And then finally, there's this other thing called Overwatch, which is a Valve program, which basically how it works is when you play competitive matches, demos are recorded. And based off of a lot of different metrics, one of them is how often you're reported, highlights of your demos get sent to the Overwatch program. And then people that Valve have selected that are just regular gamers go and they watch your demo, and then they decide if you cheat. And it's more of like a tribunal. It's not just one person who sits there and says, you're cheating, now you're Overwatch banned. The problem with it is, number one, a lot of people don't want to devote that kind of time to sit there. I mean, you're not getting paid. You're a volunteer. And then the other problem is, well, humans are humans, right? You're usually going to err on the side of caution, and you're not going to go ban someone unless you're completely blatant about it.
Right. Yeah, and the other problem with that is it really doesn't scale. You can't. It only does work in competitive matches. You're not going to be able to capture enough video easily. I mean, they probably could do more than they do now, but to get enough people to sit and watch through all that footage, really, for no gain of themselves is really not a great way to get it done, even though it is probably the one that works the best with overt cheating, anyway, that we saw.
So recently, Gabe made a Reddit post, and the title was "Bow Back and Trust." Yeah,
so a lot of this information was interesting. It had come out from someone who was reversing back that Valve was checking your DNS cache, hashing the results, and sending an MD5 up to them for storage, which people found incredibly invasive. And there was a big outlash, and so Gabe got on and started his own post to sort of defend themselves. And his message basically came down to trust us. Like, we're a game company, you can just trust us. It's not a big deal. And it was interesting. We have a couple quotes up here, and I'll read one. He says, for most cheat developers, social engineering might be a cheaper way to attack the system than continuing to code the arms race, which means that there will be more Reddit posts trying to cast back in a sinister light. So he's saying, yeah, it's invasive, but they're really just trying to paint us in a poor light so that people will sort of not want back to exist anymore. And that's kind of not a very good answer for that as well.
I mean, if we remember back to the economy slide, I don't think that the people who are making millions of dollars a month are really going to care that much. I mean, I'm sure it happens. But ultimately, look, they can already beat back. They don't need to bash it into the ground.
Yeah, it just didn't seem like that was really their goal based on the numbers we saw and how much they were probably making on the cheats. I don't think they're struggling all that much. And then he says our response is to make it clear that what we were actually doing and why with enough transparency that people can make their own judgment as to whether or not we are trustworthy. Which was interesting because they obviously couldn't talk about it up front because then the cheat people would know what they were doing to detect it. But at the same time, it's not really transparency when you get caught and then are transparent about it either. So, and then of course, the final thing that I thought was really interesting in that post was he indicated that the specific backtest for these cheats lasted about 13 days. So they spent all this development time to reverse the cheat code, figure out what they were doing. They then spent development time to build this system to detect it with the cache lookup. They deployed it. 13 days later, the gig is up. They have to do another cheat detection. So it just doesn't seem that this is signature writing for antivirus. It's just really not a great solution.
For the invasive nature, I think it was something like 654 accounts were caught.
Yeah.
It was extremely low return on what they were doing.
Yeah, very low return. And then this was an interesting article as well on PC World in May of 2014. Brian Dye, the Senior Vice President for Information Security at Symantec, declared antivirus is dead. This article was really interesting because they go on to talk about how their signature-based systems really aren't working. And the main quote I thought was interesting from FireEye as well is they said the function signature-based AV serves has become more akin to ghost hunting than threat detection. So they're really finding the most obvious, most blatant cheats that really don't get you much. It's a losing solution, and for Valve to be spending that kind of money on that, especially for how as invasive as it is, for as little time it lasts for protection, it just doesn't seem like a really good solution for the long run. The antivirus vendors have given up, and they're moving to other smarter techniques for detecting the channels with which threats are coming in instead of just focusing on signatures. Even though you kind of have to have them to catch the easy stuff, they really aren't that effective.
So again, here's some of the more popular anti-cheats. Blizzard's Warden kind of mentioned it before, what it was doing. It monitors RAM processes, browser tabs, etc. There's been a lot of research also on VAC. We know for a fact that it did, at one point, look at your DNS cache and send it up to them. And it's always just kind of been this justifiable reason to them that, hey, look, it's all in the name of anti-cheat. Trust us.
Yeah, and it's a difficult problem because cheating is one of the reasons I don't play online gaming very much. I prefer single-player games now for that reason, because it was just pretty obvious in a lot of cases that there were people that were just too good, getting shot across the map with very visible parts of your model exposed, things like that. It just made the game frustrating to play.
So if you start looking at EULAs for these companies and what you're actually agreeing to when you decide to use their software, it's kind of incredible that people are not up in arms about this. I mean, people were freaking out, what was it, a couple months ago about the Facebook app.
Oh, right.
And this is so much worse.
Yeah, essentially what these license agreements say is we'll do anything we can to find it on your system. That's pretty much, at least that's how the Valve one reads. On the other two, we looked at the Blizzard ones, and they basically say, we'll look at your RAM, which if it's a rootkit, it's questionable as to how well that would work. And same with Punkbuster as well. And there's a lot of other things these tools do
I think the bottom line, though, too, is who wants to sit there and monitor what these anti-cheats are doing on your system every day, right? They're constantly evolving. You're downloading updates all the time, so who knows what Valve is going to push out tomorrow.
Right.
So with that, we'll talk a little bit about how the cheats themselves are working. Most of them that you go out and pay for, that you just don't find on a forum for free, they're DRM-based, so you go out, you sign up for the forum, now you have access, you download this nice little loader, it authenticates you, and then it will go ahead and download your cheat. A lot of them have actually started to move to Amazon EC2.
Yep.
And
cheats as a service.
We sent Amazon a couple of abuse case tickets just based off the traffic that we were seeing. Amazon doesn't care, okay? Those sites are still up there. They're whatever. Even though if you read the Amazon use agreement, it's in clear violation. And then the picture down below is us capturing the traffic from the cheat loader. The two big files that you see are the actual injection or the cheat. Hopefully that kind of shows up better over there.
It's about a meg, I think it is, if you can't see the picture very well.
Right. So here's a picture of the loaders. The bottom picture is of this particular loader in the middle. It's from Aim Junkies, of it going out to EC2, and it ends up downloading 15 megs. But if you look at the previous picture, you saw that the file that it actually uses to inject into Counter-Strike is about a meg.
So this was probably why you're playing the game. It's downloading data for some reason. We're not sure what yet.
And we didn't have a lot of time to actually reverse what it was downloading. I did send it to someone else. They looked at it very briefly, but a lot of what it's doing looks malicious beyond how these cheats are working. Again, there's no reason for it to keep communicating back. after it's already downloaded what it needs to.
So how are these cheats working? So if the in order for them to get into the machine, I think most of us know this by now, and look at things like DNS cache and about a lot of other things. The cheats need to get up above the game and inject code into it, and so they need to be a rootkit. They need to run at ring 0, and that's, I think, pretty obvious. The problem then therein for the anti-cheats is they also need to be running at that level too. So it's this cat and mouse game in ring 0, and it doesn't seem to be incredibly effective. And so you have two very invasive pieces of software on your machine, sort of duking it out, and who knows doing what else.
Yeah, I mean, Gabe himself even called this a cat and mouse game.
Yeah. Okay. So we're going to... go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, so part of the research that we did was a lot of people think that BAC does a pretty good job of detecting cheats. I think the...
Sir,
Well, so here is a little highlight reel of using cheats in Counter-Strike Global Offensive, and basically...
Yeah.
The long version is that I never got banned.
Yeah, and you'll notice you can see these little square boxes in the background. Those are the wall hacks, so you can see where all your enemies are through the map. And then we have an aimbot on here as well. And we've slowed it down in some spots in the video so you can actually see. But actually, a lot of this stuff is happening very quickly. And so you can see sort of how superhuman it is.
By the way, I totally forget what's actually said in the game because of the hacking, so... People might get a little bit angry. Just keep that in mind.
Yeah, there may be some language in the video, so we apologize for that.
Sir, you just have to calm down, okay? You're out of your...
What's Weasel do? Because he's a douchebag.
Sir, I'm sorry, but you just have to leave, okay? Grenade out!
I got 6. Never mind.
TT on platform.
Just instant kills with pistols. Dead. And blue is the only visible part. Green is through a wall.
One push. He smoked mid.
Oh no.
The guy's dead.
Oh, I hate that so much.
That guy's dead. So he doesn't even really have to be aiming exactly. The aimbot will take care of the bullet in their head.
By the way, the entire point of this was to be as blatant as obvious.
To get banned.
Yes.
It did not happen.
Well, I was kind of hoping that he would sponsor our research, but...
Oh my god.
That guy died.
I did affect that too, though.
No, I threw that myself. So, I checked the account. It's still not banned. This started in July. Right, they'll do it in waves. And their last wave was, I think, 3 days before DerbyCon. So, like I said, the account is still not banned.
Just his head showing.
I'm not sure if you can see the chat, but a lot of the times people will be like, oh, it's okay. He's cheating. He'll get back banned. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, there's a lot of that conversation.
Oh my god.
Yeah?
A fire with keeping doors. It's too mid.
Right. They should know.
It's pretty ridiculous. If you're on the receiving end of that, it's painful. Like, he'll kill the whole team. And one guy usually doesn't do that in the game. Yeah.
We'll talk about the data that we gathered after this.
I don't even think you were aiming at him.
I don't think so either.
So another important
Yeah, he's on
thing
the
with the game itself, there's competitive mode and then there's just casual mode. So we did this in both. After playing, I think, like 10 competitive matches over, I don't know, probably 2 or 3 weeks, I did finally get Overwatch banned. So that happened.
You did shoot someone through a wall.
Counter-terrorists win. This was our victory.
There you go. So I have 42 kills.
Oh, and there's the ban requests on the side. Everyone's trying to kick him off the server.
Alright, and then we'll end with this.
Steal your girl.
There's still more
One
long.
more than up. Oh, bomb down long.
Oh, fuck, there's still another one.
Ooh, nice buy.
Last one's mid.
There's no point. That guy's dead.
Help, I don't know how to use a Mac.
So yeah, still not back banned. And as Ryan said, after 10 competitive matches with very obvious cheating, or for the accounts that were used and recorded. Yeah, Overwatch finally caught the account, and it doesn't appear that Back does a good job at this.
Right, and we use a lot of different cheats too. It wasn't just the aim junkies thing.
No.
Basically every single site that was on the previous slide, talking about the economy, we got cheats from all of those sites. And most of the cheats were made by 3 different makers. One was Helios, one was Optics, and I remember the third
It
one.
feels like there's 3 guys making all the cheats and selling it to all the other sites.
But regardless, none of them were ever detected. Alright, so a quick review. The problem is that cheating still was not very well detected. Now, if you go out and use a public cheat, it'll probably get detected. The anti-cheats are pretty invasive, and the cheat makers actually have quite a bit of money.
So we thought a lot about this, and it was a tricky problem originally because in AppSec, we don't try to solve anything on the client really. I mean, we put protections on the client, but we don't trust them because the client is usually compromised. Unless you can control the entire desktop at an enterprise with lots of tools, a user's home machine is not something you're going to really be able to protect against. And so after bouncing a lot of ideas off each other, and after machine learning sort of been coming up, how many people are familiar with machine learning as technology? So a few of you. Basically, it's using math to solve problems with computers.
The really important thing is machine learning does not have to be perfect.
Yes.
It just has to be better than what we currently have, and it should probably be better than what a human can do.
Yeah. And what's really nice about it is you don't have to code the statistics around it. It'll figure that part out, which is also nice. So it makes it a lot easier. You can get stuff out and modifications out much more quickly than if you were trying to hand code an algorithm that was managing all these statistics and things like that. So the first problem we ran into was acquiring data. You want to talk about trying to get the data?
So, like this slide says, machine learning loves data. And our problem is that we'd reach out to Valve, we'd reach out to these other studios, and we'd be like, hey, this is what we're doing. Can you give us some data? And we would tell them, hey, look, this is what we want, this is the feature set. I never really heard back from anyone on that. So then we decided, all right, well, we're going to have to go out and harvest all this ourselves. So there's a site called backban.com, which is just a giant database of every single Steam account that has the ban flag set to 1. Yeah. And then we decided, okay, so that will be our cheater data set. There's some issues with this. We'll go over that in a second.
Yeah.
And then we decided, okay, so let's kind of pick people who are decent at the game. So we started to look at the leagues. And we're like, all right, well, we'll just go harvest everything from those sites and get their Steam IDs, and that's basically what we did.
Yeah, and Valve has their Steam Web API, so you can basically make JSON requests or URL requests, and they'll pass back JSON packets to you that contain all the statistics for the user, if their profile is public only, so that's another problem. And we were able to get all the stats for CSGO that are publicly available. There's a lot of stats we suspect they have, and we saw, I think, in one of the beta posts on CSGO, there's a lot of interesting stats they have internally, so they should be able to do a way better job than we did using their data sets as well.
Or they could just give it to us.
Yeah. So some of the problems with the data set, when you get backbanned, it does not indicate from which game you were playing. So that's kind of a huge problem. I think the backban site has 60,000 pages with 30 accounts per page that got banned. That's a lot of data to go through. We ended up collecting, I believe, 600,000 Steam IDs from that site. And after we threw out all the data from there, we ended up with about 25,000, 30,000 that actually had CSGO statistics that weren't private. And then we went through some steps further to filter the data down. So that was one problem. We don't know if it was a backban from CSGO. It could be from another game. So we decided to look at the date that the backban happened, and if it happened before CSGO got released, we really knew those weren't going to count. So we threw all those rows out. Non-cheating player set is going to contain cheaters. So we went and looked at the league data, and we bounced it against the Steam API. There were backbanned people in there. So we went ahead and added them to the cheating category. Even though they were playing competitively, they may not have actively been cheating. We just decided to group them in that category to be consistent.
And then a lot of the API has issues in and of itself, like theoretically impossible statistics.
Yeah, they trust the data on the client.
Well, just like with 400% accuracy, we'd see people, obviously the most accuracy that you could have with a gun would be 100%. So we got rid of all those. There were other numbers that just did not make sense and were blatantly obvious that people were injecting into the API and it was storing it.
Yeah, and that's probably why they got banned, is their stats were weird. And they were probably just injecting those. There were probably a cheat at one point that let them doctor their stats, and Valve probably came along and banned them, which is why they were in that data set. So their statistics, we really couldn't use them because they just didn't make any sense. So in machine learning land, and this is a classification problem, and we're really just trying to classify users as cheaters or non-cheaters. And to go through that, we used what's called supervised learning, and all that means is we gathered a bunch of data that we think are in two piles, all the cheaters and all the non-cheaters. We feed all those in to our machine learning model, and it develops what it thinks is a good way to sort these two things out given one row of data. And they call these data points features. And a feature is basically just a data point that has some sort of intrinsic meaning. So total kills is not meaningful unless you maybe convert that to a statistic like over an hour. Like how many kills per hour? At that point it becomes a little more meaningful because you're not going to have as many kills in an hour. That's, you know, some of those are going to be superhuman stats.
Yeah. One other thing that I think we forgot to mention is how we got involved with machine learning. So just full disclosure, we do not pretend to be machine learning experts.
No, not at all.
We took a Coursera class
From
offered by
Stanford.
Stanford University, and we got to the point in the class where the professor said, "You now know more than everyone in Silicon Valley."
We're
So
like, sweet, I'm
like, all right,
done.
cool.
That was week
That's all we
3,
need.
or class 3?
That was like, I don't know, 6, 3, something like that.
So we didn't finish it, but we did get the basics, and I feel pretty confident in the work we've done to this point that this is a viable solution. But there are definitely more people who know more about all the nuances and details and could probably even do a better job. Basically, we use what's called a boosted decision tree. And essentially, this is just if-then logic based on the statistics. So to try to code this by hand, we had 32 features I think we picked eventually. That's 32 unique data points per user. To write sort of if-then logic and try to group them and manage that code and keep all those ideas in our head and really try to figure out how that would work without machine learning would have been a super complicated problem to solve in code. What's nice about machine learning is you give it all the data, and if we think they're cheaters or non-cheaters, then it builds the decision tree automatically. So we don't have to write that code. It's just like a black box. We put data in, we get the answer out the other side. This example here is sort of how this would work with the Titanic, whether someone drowned or not, whether someone survived. And so if you were a male, you didn't survive right away unless your age was over 9.5 and your siblings and spouse, basically if you had a family over 2.5, you would have survived as a man. So that's kind of like machine learning, how it would model something based on the statistics it was looking at. And if you were thinking about this problem, you may not have considered all those data points. So it's nice how it sort of solves it for you.
So now we're going to show a demo of all this actually working.
See if I can find the browser. All right, so we decided to use, we saw that Microsoft had released on Azure ML Studio. And it looked like, based on this sort of flowcharting methodology they used, there wasn't really any code. I mean, you can write code in there, but you didn't have to write code for a lot of things like data filtering, amplifying data, adding duplicate roles, merging data sets. It was all just drag a box and tell it what to do, which rows to include, which rows to eliminate. And then they had machine models you could drop on, you could pipe the data into. It made prototyping this proof of concept incredibly fast. So we were able to get good results. I think our first model, what was the accuracy on that one?
Yeah, first model sucked. It was
Yeah,
like 50%.
Yeah, so we had a 50% success rate on detecting cheaters versus non-cheaters. And then we started looking into comparing all the types of models. We have, I might jump to that slide. That was on a previous slide. Yeah, so on the right here, you can see that we have all the different types of algorithms we looked at. We looked at two classes: average perception, a Bayes point machine, boosted decision tree, decision forest, jungle, so on and so forth. Based on comparing all the results, the boosted decision tree was the one that came out ahead. And so that was the one we decided to use. And once we started throwing out rows that were junk or didn't really make sense logically, our results really improved drastically.
Yeah, so basically what you're looking at here is these two rows. I should have had a laser pointer.
Yeah.
Yeah, these two rows that I'm pointing to.
This row here and this row here.
Those are our data sets. So the one right there is all of our cheating data. The one to the right is all the non-cheating data. It goes through a bunch of different filters to filter out exactly what we were talking about before with some of the problems that we were noticing. So we got rid of everyone who didn't play the game over, I think it was 10 hours. So if you didn't play the game for 10 hours, we don't care because your stats are probably going to be skewed.
Yeah.
If you had abnormal accuracy, aka over 100%, we got rid of you. That's basically what all this is doing up there. Then we joined the data together.
Yeah, and then at that point we started splitting it out. You take some of the data and you throw it in to test your model. So I think we took 20% to save for testing the accuracy. And then we took the other 80% and threw it in to train the model. And then the boosted decision tree generated a working model, and then we could get outputs on these little boxes. So this is the run history here. So it scores the model for you, and then you can visualize the results. So over here, these are all our features. You can see on the last two columns is if it was backbanned or not, and then the score, and then the probability that that was correct.
So basically, actually, the first row, if you look at this one, this guy was not backbanned, but the machine learning decided, hey, look, this guy's cheating. That's what the one to the right represents. Everything else is pretty much aligning up, which is how it's determining the accuracy. So the 0, and then the machine learning model decided, hey, look, this guy still isn't cheating, so he gets a 0. And then the 1s are obviously the cheaters.
Right. So then you can come down and score your model, and then you can compare models as well, which is what we did. And it'll visualize a curve, essentially, and then you can compare different models. So it'll graph a bunch of different model on the chart and tell you how they compare against each other. So this is essentially, we looked at, it has true positives, false negatives, and true negatives, so you can kind of see where your data are falling. And then it looks at area under the curve, that is how much of the data it's successfully identified, is basically the data points under the curve, and anything above it would be outside of that.
Yeah, so as you can see, the accuracy right now, and you wouldn't theoretically want 100% accuracy.
Yeah. Some of our data is bad.
Wrong. Again, given the features that we were able to get just through the Steam Web API, it's pretty impressive. I mean, if we had more data, it would probably grow a lot better in accuracy.
Yeah, but 88%, I mean, that felt pretty good to us, but we had a goal on the area under the curve. And then, so what's cool about Azure as well, the Machine Learning Studio, is you can come in, and then we created another path over here that I'm putting a box around, and this is a web service interface. So you pipe in one row into this, it does the same filtering we did on the other side, and then as you can see a line sort of coming across here in the middle. That's the model. So we put the data in, and that's the training model, and then it spits out an answer at the bottom for back to the web service. And so what we did, we decided to code a website around this. So we have the wizard anti-cheat, we called it, for lack of a better name. So WAC for short. So you can put in your community ID or your 64-bit ID. Click the Analyze button, and then this passes it off to the Azure Web Service.
So I think we make a total of 4 API calls out to Valve.
Yeah, we get active stats for this user from Valve real time, and then pass it to the machine learning model.
Yep,
my account's coming up. I do. So it takes a couple minutes. This is my normal Steam account. You can see, I don't know if you can see the green on the black there, but it says not cheating. And then we kind of dump all those statistics you might see from the Steam Web API, just so we could look, sort of compare the results and see if it made sense or not when we were troubleshooting this. Here's Ryan's account. Again, not cheating.
Yeah, this is my non-cheating account.
Yeah, and the score is,
It's negative, by the way.
4.3 times 10 to the negative 6. So it's very low score, so not cheating at all. And then we went into some other accounts that were cheating. That's another one. And where is that? I think I have a screenshot of it here. I don't have the ID handy, so I'll just show you a picture of it. So this is one of the accounts we used.
This was actually the account that the video was from.
Yeah, the videos are from this account. And so it not backbanned, but our machine learning algorithm caught that. We felt really good about that once we got that result. And then we have some from our data set as well that we popped up against it. And again, we only put suspected of cheating because, this is a proof of concept. And it does matter the game mode. So Steam, Counter-Strike Global Offensive has different game modes, and so some of them are really fast-paced, so your stats will be elevated. Those people, when you put their stats in, look like they're cheating because our model is based mainly off of normal game mode. So the people with outline, and that was one of the data points we could not get from the Web API was, well, which game mode had which stats. They were just across the board. So most people play the regular one. All the league people were playing the regular one, but a lot of the band people could be all over. And then we had friends we had run through this. And we could look at their stats and ask them if they maybe were playing a different game mode, and they said, yeah. So we could tell that, but if we got that data, it would be, we'd have a much more accurate model.
And then again, just to keep something in mind, this would never be deployed in production as a website.
No.
So this would be running on the server, and it'd be doing all this in real time, and you wouldn't have to wait 2 weeks for a band to go on or...
Yeah, and every match is going to have a set of statistics sort of building up over time, and it feels like with the data points that they have internally that it seems likely that they could get some pretty good accuracy based on, and again, the other awesome thing about this is it's non-invasive. It's not running on the client. There's really nothing you need to do but capture the data points. And they're not data points they can fabricate because then you're not killing people, like, because it's about how quickly you're killing people, or and there's like I said, there's 32 features we used, so yeah.
So the bottom line with all this is something, obviously right now it's not perfect.
No.
But I think I would feel more comfortable with a solution like this when I want to go play an online game than Valve or Blizzard or name your company who wants to have me agree to this ridiculous end-user license agreement, and God only knows what they're really doing.
Yeah, it changes
That's
every
my personal
week or day.
opinion about it.
Yeah, same.
So, one frequently asked question that we got when we started sending this out to selected people was, okay, so it makes sense for aimbot detection, right? Because actually a lot of our features would revolve around aimbots.
Yeah.
Going back to kind of what we said earlier about what CSGO development team released when they were building the game, they have metrics for where you were standing when you shot, like how distance traveled the bullet. If we had all that, it would also be really good at detecting wall bots as well.
Yeah. Yeah, especially for, the time some of those people peeked out from behind the wall, and your reaction time was just, it's inhuman,
Right.
unless you know that there's a lead time. So it seems like that would be an interesting feature to look at as well.
And with that, we'll open up to Q&A. So the question was basically, does the system right now spit out why it thinks that they're cheating? So on the back end, if you were looking at it from the machine learning perspective, not necessarily just the website, it would score that particular incident.
Yeah, the site doesn't at the moment, but that's data you could get at. Yeah.
You had a question? Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, Valve actually did send us an email. It was like 3 weeks before DerbyCon. It was actually after someone at, I think, DEF CON presented a talk on how they used machine learning on the opposite end to cheat at Hearthstone.
Hearthstone, yeah.
And then he said that he was going to release it to the public, and then Blizzard was like, oh no, we're really interested in this. Don't release it. So then he stopped. I'm like, hey, Valve, by the way, we're going to give this talk. Don't come to us after we give it and be like, don't release it.
We let them know.
So they started talking to us. It looked promising, and then they kind of just dropped off the face of the earth. But I have no idea why they would not want to use something like this.
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe they are internally developing it. It's hard to say.
It could be, yeah.
So we had multiple accounts that were cheating. And by multiple, I mean, I think we had about 10 different accounts. And this, like I said, this has been going on for about a year. We've been researching this. None of them are banned.
It's a good question. I don't know if we have a number on that. That's math we could do. But on the model, I think that's kind of what it's kind of indicating is, there's an 80% match. Though you have to take into account some of the other information. So I'm not really sure math is, and all that statistics isn't my strongest point. But it's something we do want to look into and get some good numbers on.
Sure. So the main features that we initially focused on were the kill-to-death ratio. We looked at your overall accuracy. Then we started looking at your accuracy for specific guns, and that was where we kind of handpicked. If you're cheating, what gun are you most likely to use, right?
What gets the instant kill,
So like in the movie, one of the sniper rifles will kill you instantly if you shoot him in the head. So that's probably a guy that a shooter's going to prefer more than another gun. The AWP, which is the green sniper rifle, you shoot them most places in the body. It's one shot, one kill. So we picked those kind of guns. We picked the Desert Eagle. We looked at their specific accuracy. We also looked at kills per hour.
Yeah, we wanted to see how fast they were killing people too, because in some of the videos we looked at, there was just people like clearing whole areas very quickly, and it just seemed unlikely. Maybe I'm not that good, so maybe a pro could do that. I don't think so though. In most cases, that they'd be that good, especially over a long period of time.
So there will be a white paper released on all this. It'll cover all the features that we used and a lot of other stuff too. That will be released at the, I guess, probably whitewizardstudios.com.
Your studios?
Yes,
singular?
whitewizardstudio.com. So that's where the slide deck will be along with the white paper. It'll be up after DerbyCon.
Are there any other what? I'm sorry? Why are people cheating? Oh, well...
So remember earlier when we talked about, what is that? The supply chain, right? And we used the Breaking Bad analogy of, here we go. All right. So that's kind of like, why do people want to use meth? Same kind of thing in a way, because you do... Everyone in this room was laughing at that video. It's funny, it's fun. People like to cheat for that reason. Then there's another set of people who like to cheat. And those are the ones who want to download the cheat and basically go play competitively and win tournaments online. Obviously it doesn't work out very well when you try to do that at LAN, but there's that subset too. But I think the most, basically there's a lot of trolling.
Yeah,
Think of it
trolling.
like that way. I mean,
The psychology of it too is interesting because when you see that, you're laughing. When you're doing it, it's kind of like it gives you a sense of it's not unlike hacking things and getting in either. It's a similar sort of a feeling of like dominating, like controlling people and like being very successful and good at it. Even though you're cheating, it still sort of provides the same sort of feelings, and it's kind of funny because it is totally just.
there was one last
cheating.
subset of person who likes to cheat, and I actually felt bad. A guy was talking about how he would use cheats to basically level the playing field because he had a physical disability. So I guess in that particular instance, if that's really to like make it so that you have a fair chance against everyone else, that's one thing.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Well, it wasn't me. This was in like a PC Gamer article. So
Yeah.
all right.
Thank you.